Welcome to the Legacy Radio Network. This is the Everything Financial Radio Show. I'm your host, Dennis Tubbergen, and you can find us here every week at this time, and we're glad you joined us today. You know, we've got a terrific show lined up for you today. Mr. Karl Denninger is going to stop by and give us his opinions and views on what's going on politically. He'll talk about the debates from last week. We'll also be talking about what happened in France in the early 1700s, and what can we learn from it? You know, there is an old saying. In fact, I think my history professor told me about this, or gave me this saying, and that is that those who don't study history are doomed to repeat it. And you know that quantitative easing happened as long ago as 300 years ago. In fact, you can actually go back 2,000 years ago. And the whole idea of money printing or debasing a currency existed. So there really is nothing new under the sun. And I'm going to share with you today a story about a gentleman by the name of John Law, who was a Scotsman who was born in the late 1600s, who was actually put in charge of the French money supply in the 1700s. And he created a period of prosperity, or the illusion of prosperity, before the currency was actually destroyed. Very, very interesting story. I hope you'll stay tuned for that. Also, quick reminder, if you have not yet requested your 2012 guide, Surviving a Market Crash, that guide will be available for just a couple more weeks. You'll want to go to investingapproach.com to request your guide. The guide contains information about where we are today, economically speaking, and what it might mean for your nest egg. As many of you know, if you're longtime listeners, we believe that we are in an economic winter season. This is explained fully in the 2012 guide. This winter season has happened many, many times since 1789, and we outline all the evidence there, and we tell you exactly what we think is going to happen based on what's happened in the past. And certainly the story we'll tell today about John Law also makes that point. Also, quickly, I'll let you know about some upcoming discovery groups that we have. We're going to be at Railside Golf Club on Thursday, November the 1st. That's out in Byron Center. We'll be in Caledonia on Thursday, November the 8th at Stonewater Country Club. If you'd like more information or would like to register for this, you can go to personallegacyseminars.com. That is personallegacyseminars.com. We'll talk about the economic winter season and what we believe lies ahead. Also, if you'd like to listen to an interview that maybe you've heard on a past show, we have a website set up where all past shows and interviews are archived. You can go to everythingfinancialradio.com. That is everythingfinancialradio.com, and listen to any of the past interviews that we've done, including the one today that we will do with Mr. Karl Denninger. Joining me again today on the Legacy Radio Network is Mr. Karl Denninger. Karl is a prolific blogger and a frequent guest on the show, and Karl, we're awfully glad to have you back with us today.
You know, thank you very much for having me on.
Karl, a lot going on in the world. At the time we're recording this, it's about a week before the show will actually air in several different markets, and this can be a lot can happen in a week, so I'll point that out to our listeners right now. But let me just ask you your opinion. There's a lot of unrest, certainly in the Middle East. Give us your take as to what's going on and what some consequences could be.
I'm very disturbed about what I'm seeing, especially the situation between Syria and Turkey. There is a very strong supposition in this that Iran is somehow embedded in this mess, that either they're prompting it or that there are some other people who would like to see Iran get dragged into whatever is going on. Anybody that doesn't understand the significance of those two nations getting into a significant dust-up needs to pull out a map, take a look. The possibility that this, along with the Iranian currency melting down, which has happened over the last couple of days, it does not turn into conflagration. The possibilities are enormous there. Remember that the Iranian currency meltdown is to a large degree something that we have caused because of our sanctions regime. And so this is what happens when you try to exert pressure in a so-called diplomatic format by doing that kind of thing. You run the risk that instead of getting what you you want, which is the other country buckling under and saying, okay, we'll do whatever it is that you want us to do. What they do instead is they try to resist, and then you end up in this kind of scenario. And the key point to take away from this, I think, for everybody, is that hungry bellies are the fuel from which both riots and revolutions are made. Neither one of those is a good outcome in that part of the world right now.
Karl, explain to our listeners who may not be familiar what actually happened with the Iranian currency.
Well, two things. First, a couple of days ago, it plunged by about 20% versus essentially everything else on an instant basis. It wasn't a decline; it just suddenly dropped against the dollar and other currencies. And so this was not due to the nation going out and printing currency. Okay, it was due to a trade dislocation and just a loss of confidence. This is how currencies go through this kind of a dissociative event. The problem with rapid movements of that sort of magnitude is that what happens is you lose convertibility. In other words, the ability of people to trade them for dollars or euros or something else instantaneously disappears, because nobody wants to be holding the bag in going through a trade transaction with you when the fluctuations in value are that severe. There's no hedge that you can put on that adequately covers you. And so international trade and the ability to transact in things outside the borders of your country almost instantaneously comes to a halt. That in an environment where most of what you need is imported and you're trying to trade all of this for oil becomes an extraordinarily serious problem immediately.
So, Karl, I was reading an article that was published, I believe, in the Globe and Mail about a week and a half ago. It quoted Gary Schilling, who's also been a guest on the program. And Mr. Schilling said that he's still in the deflationist camp, as I believe you are, and he says that these little injections of liquidity that the Fed keeps putting into the system will eventually not work. And he said that one of three things could really trigger, in his view, a significant, even a crushing deflation. I don't think those are exactly his words, but the three things he mentioned were a European bank failure, some kind of an event in the Middle East, or a hard landing for China. So what effects could this situation, this developing situation in the Middle East have potentially for the United States, even economically, or the world?
There is a long history of regimes that come under this kind of pressure attempting to use war to get out of the box. This is, not speculation. This is historical fact. Now, that is not to say that Iran would attempt that, but if Iran was to, for example, sink a couple of tankers in the Straits of Hormuz, there would be an instantaneous dissociative effect in the oil markets. And in addition to that, if they were to launch what they have, and remember, while people are talking about them maybe, trying to build a nuclear weapon, the fact is that they have hundreds of relatively accurate, relatively long-range missiles that could target shipping and other assets. So, we have very good anti-missile defenses on our naval vessels, but if you have somebody that launches 500 missiles at you, it only takes one, right?
Unfortunately, that's true.
Yeah, unfortunately, you need to be 100% effective in your defenses, and the other guy only has to hit you one time to do a tremendous amount of damage. So, whether or not there would be a decision to do something like this that would come out of that kind of a scenario is an unknown. But if that kind of an event was to occur, or if we were to just see a little border skirmish between Syria and Turkey turn into something that was a whole lot more involved, we actually saw troop commitments, or we saw somebody cross into the other's territory with a column full of armor or something like that, then things get out of control real fast. And remember that we have two very large nations with a very large military contingent that very much want to see access to Middle Eastern resources, those two nations being Russia and China. So this is not a good scenario at all.
Well, and certainly let's talk briefly before the break, because the Chinese economy is certainly, in my view anyway, looking at a hard landing. What's your take?
I think China's already detonated. I don't understand how anybody can look at the numbers that are coming out of that country and then added onto that the endemic fraud that comes from government reporting in there. They never tell the truth. I mean, we're bad in the United States. These people are ridiculous. How you can look at that country and what's been going on in that nation and not say that that effectively the country has already imploded, not is going to implode, but has imploded, is beyond me. The labor unrest that's starting over there is getting out of hand too, and that's going to lead to more and more problems. This is not something that all of a sudden explodes in your face and happens in one day and then it's over. This is the kind of event that is most likely to take place over the course of a decade. And so what you are seeing here is the end of the so-called Chinese miracle, which was always a scam, and the truth is going to come to the forefront. It's not going to be pretty. And I see that as being one of the primary drivers, along with the continuing problems in Europe, which are not solved and can't be solved without an honest conversation being had between citizens and government, as being what ultimately sets this thing off. I've said for quite some time that the second round of this is going to come from the East. And the only question is whether or not it comes from the kind of East or the way East.
Well, we are chatting with Mr. Karl Denninger. Karl's website is market-ticker.org. He is a prolific blogger and commentator. I'd encourage you to check out his work. We will continue our conversation with him when Everything Financial Radio returns after these words. Stay with us.